Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the Pure Presence book study with Atmananda Krishna Menon, our new best friend. Love this guy, love his teaching. And our other new best friend, Jenny Sheehan. Welcome, Jenny. Hi.
Hey, hi.
Hey. Jenny and I were just talking in the green room before we went live and it was my error. I didn't realize we had her back to back this week and next week, and then another June 7th, because we had a couple of gaps in there for people that were not here or unavailable or have schedule issues. And I'm just wondering, Jenny Beal or Amy. Now, Amy, you were just last week, so maybe Jenny Beal. Would you let me know if you would be available for next week, and that way we're not. Everyone doesn't like just think it's just I'm only grabbing Jenny Sheehan.
That's okay.
So,
Yeah, I can do that.
will that work? Okay, thank you for that. That'd be awesome. And this week is super awesome content we get to look at, and we're going to start with Discourse 111, the controlling principle. Jenny, what do you think about this one?
Yes, the title caught me, the controlling principle, and wondering if a look at what inspires. And he lovely in the very first paragraph elucidates this fact that every perception by itself is invariably governed and corrected by the relatively higher faculty compared to the senses, the body's senses, called buddhi, lower reason. This buddhi is in itself controlled and corrected by another faculty called higher reason, or vidya vritti, which is well beyond the mind. This is consciousness itself appearing to be functioning. So it's that understanding that an operating system may seem to be in effect, which is not the use of the higher divine intelligence that we all have access to, and consciousness itself never leaving us, is operating in us, as us, through us in the world. I found that pretty good news.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Bill?
Well, it matches the teaching that Francis shares, that the personal self doesn't make choices. It happens at a different faculty. It happens at a different, and even that one is not the highest one. There's one that is higher than that, and even the hierarchy's not there. So it's just it's almost more like an activity of consciousness that seems to have features, but it really doesn't. We give it features just to try to understand it, I think.
Exactly. In Atmananda describing it as whether we're speaking in an absolute plane, in absolute reality, or in a relative plane. And of course, if we concede the existence of thoughts and feelings and senses, and then we are speaking in the relative plane. But the last paragraph kind of ties the two together. We're usually slow to accept the existence of this faculty, how consciousness itself operating. It's usually confounded with the lower reason itself, their workings being apparently similar.
Right. So do we visit that later where it almost talks about the mind comes in and sort of tries to grab the decision. I think that, you know, it's like the course says the ego voices first and loudest, and it might be that apparatus. It tries to make the play and then it gets trumped by higher reason. And I think that occurs as our attention is abiding our attention as consciousness.
Yes, you're exactly right. Starting from 117 and the last 4 discourses really do all seem to talk about this in pretty good detail. So yeah, I saw that too.
There was a couple of comments, one from Jenny. Okay. And Jenny said, I asked Francis what is meant by higher reasoning. He said, it's very simple. It's just reasoning about the nature of the self or the world rather than about objects.
And then later she says, well, Francis said it is the same kind of reasoning as lower reasoning. It's just the subject of the reasoning or the aim of the reasoning that's different. So another, is gross versus subtle planes that Atmananda uses.
Yeah.
So the lower reasoning, we have to fix a grilled cheese sandwich sometimes, and we're functioning in there. But if there seems to be a pondering of thoughts and feelings or a noticing of these things, that is the higher reasoning, because it's in the more subtle level, not the gross objective level.
Yeah. It's
all consciousness. We're splitting hairs here.
Yeah. And he splits hairs too, because understanding helps to split hairs as we relate to the body-mind experience and the teachings.
Right. It's the peeling away of onion skin, perhaps, that analogy of, or husking corn and the fine threads that need to come out. I do want to point to that Rick West chimed in that, can we say higher reasoning is seeing the world directly, transcending all words and symbols? It's about real seeing reality and always occurs in silence. It's a form of understanding.
Well, it's the witness, and there's no words or symbols or voice or even thought, and yet from that reasoning comes in wisdom.
Yes, and Jenny Beal, we're focusing a lot on the chat here rather than the book, but that as Jenny mentioned earlier, and having talked to Francis Lucille about this, that it is reasoning, it's logic applied to facts. However, it leads the mind to a stop.
Nice.
Because in the contemplation, mind goes where it can no longer think. And that quiet, that mind appearing to be quiet is, of course, the experience of consciousness itself.
So if we move to 112, self-luminosity.
Yeah,
what stands up to you here?
Well, just that self-luminosity, thinking of it in terms as what lights me up every day? What wakes from deep sleep? And it's consciousness itself is the self-luminous, the I am is consciousness itself, which self lights. I do nothing for it to occur. That's like the miracle of life, right?
Yeah. It's a miracle that we can sit here and talk about it too, because cats and dogs and mosquitoes and snakes, I don't think they do.
All right, another day. We'll wait for that discourse
Yeah,
to come.
right. Examination of things nearest to you in the second paragraph, like memory, can easily lead you to the real I, since you have only to advance just a little from there. If memory leaves you, you become an idiot in ignorance. But become an idiot in the beyond, and you are blessed. Sleep away the whole world, clinging on to consciousness, said the sage. I love that. I just think that's, that's the big jump that he talks about later.
Yes. And I loved even the shout out, what you first read, Bill. If memory leaves you, you become an idiot in ignorance, but become an idiot and beyond, and you are blessed. And it just brought to, I've always pondered that process of dementia. And I think mind can literally tire itself out. So it's a lovely injunction to sleep away the whole world, rest the weary activity of mind and cling to consciousness. It's a great injunction.
And this is one of the goals, if you would call it a goal. It's the goal of giving, where it says in the last sentence, it means give up name and form and rest in the background. And when you do that, the resting also brings activity. It just happens of its own, like the body that breathes. The body's not breathing itself, it's just being breathed. And as resting occurs, movement still happens from there.
Absolutely.
Let's see, somebody has their mic open. Now closed. All right, and what about these? Did you see these? The senses perceive objects, mind perceives the senses, I perceive the mind. I like that.
Yes, very simple way to break it down.
Yeah. And as long as you don't give the I that perceives the mind ownership to a someone.
Right.
Yeah.
The superimposition of doership, as Andrew likes to mention a lot in the chat. Yeah.
And then he says, to be more exact, I perceive objects through the senses. I perceive the senses through the mind. I perceive the mind by myself. Myself is the I. Or the self is the I.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that may be tighter.
Right. And that simple, to a question to ask oneself, what is witnessing thought? And seeing thought as an activity of the mind, and mind as an expression of a function of consciousness. Just going deeper and deeper to more simple and simple aspect is, if I am aware of thought, there's a separation there. thought is consciousness itself. So now I'm making myself spin in a circle, but to grab onto that, dropping name and form, and just the simple awareness of thought is getting in touch with the real I principle.
What is Paul talking about at 12:10? How can we know they don't? What's that referring to?
When you were getting into snakes and animals and things like that, and
we can't.
it's,
How can we know anything like that? We can't. They most likely have a language of their own, but who knows? That's a good point, Paul. How can we know they don't? We can't.
Yeah.
And it's just silly.
And 113 continues with 112, really, that you alone light up objects. If objects are lit up, meaning perceived, your real nature alone shines there. When the emphasis is on the objects lit up, consciousness appears limited. But from the standpoint of consciousness itself, from absolute point of view, consciousness is never limited. There is nothing else beside it to limit it. So it's this giving and taking and flowing of into the relative sphere, into the absolute sphere. It's never ending, the breathing back and forth. But just back to the original thing, you cannot take awareness of any object out of the perceiving of the object itself. It's always present.
Yes. Thankfully. I'm grateful for that. It shows how easily, I mean, when in this statement, this is a pretty important statement because it shows how easily we the mind that comes in and limits just by attention going to the object. It just all of a sudden attention instead of abiding and it's so fast and so subtle. It just all of a sudden is the mind is engaged.
And Donald Hoffman even has a lovely reason for this. Hypothesis is it's for survival. To see the world as an ability for fitness, survival through it. It's a lovely function of the mind to assess and perceive, and because if we step out in front of a bus, something seems to end in that. So it's not a bad thing that mind does this. It's a beautiful perpetuation of this human experience, actually.
Let's see. Rick said, it seems that eventually all teachings, concepts may appear contradictory and breach the paradoxical. As an example, you are simultaneously nothing and everything. Perhaps this is only a problem if the approach is not experiential in nature, and you're backbound, trapped within the intellect. Real understanding always transcends the conceptual.
Yeah. And Rosalind makes a cute little point that in nature, within 20 feet of poison, the antidote therein lies within 20 feet of it. I didn't know that. So good to know if ever in a jungle or something.
Ah,
Okay, how about move on? This continues from our first one. We talked about 110, that the same world viewed by science and by Vedanta. And we spent a lot of time on this last week too, co-hosting with Amy.
Yeah.
It was the first time this discourse appeared. That was 103. But the first paragraph talks about the lower reason, buddhi, that examines the world and labels it matter, and made up all kinds of laws of science that particulate to matter and the functioning and properties of this. But then sometime later, they realized matter is composed of atoms. And the nucleus of this atom, scientists admit now, is energy. And now I'm on the top of page 67, which is the source of matter. But here again, they are stuck in the mind's realm of relativity. So now Vedanta comes to the rescue and takes it higher still, proving that both the gross and the subtle, including the instrument that they have been using, so that's pointing to the mind, the lower reason for examining the world, are all objective and therefore need to be examined again exhaustively. For this, they are shown a new organ or faculty in themselves called higher reason, or vidya vritti, which, though beyond the mind, has sway over the whole world of the mind and the senses. So what I've been reading about in the chat and what Bill mentioned, that there's a place of the activity of the mind comes to rest, and we're not falling asleep when that happens. We're awake. It's quiet.
and insights, movement comes from that quiet place. That is accessing and not really act. I mean, that's not true either. But it's some accessing occurs to the higher reasoning, to the wisdom, to the movement from the intelligence of consciousness. Yeah, relax without being lazy or falling asleep.
Yes, and from this new stand, that matter and energy cannot be manifested or exist even for a moment without the help of consciousness.
Yes.
And that consciousness is the background of both matter and energy. And these are the only two states as far as objects are concerned. They are manifestations of the same reality. And Vedanta puts in quotes, Atmananda, consciousness. Thus, Vedanta establishes the truth that the whole objective world is nothing but consciousness. And we have helped each other see that over and over. It's all consciousness, consciousness appearing as consciousness. And I just think this discourse does a beautiful, eloquent job of if there's noticing of a question, why?
Yeah. It's like this understanding, when this it's going to be so exciting when this is mainstream, because it's going to change everything. And Krishna Menon was getting it, 57, almost 75 years ago. He was saying these things. So it may not happen tomorrow, but it's on the way.
Yeah. And I did just have a quick thing for myself in that last paragraph. The consciousness is the background of both matter and energy. These are only two different states. And I'm imagining there's not states in consciousness, and we can talk about states of mind as in dreaming or deep sleep. So I guess as far as objects go, they're either static or energetic, that vibrational states. If anyone, the two different states of matter, if anyone has any clarity on that. Okay.
I like this next discourse, 115, how to bridge the gulf between the relative and the absolute.
How, Bill?
Well, I mean, I found the answer. There is absolutely no bridge which can take you from the relative to the absolute. So you have to nix the bridge. The only bridge existing is consciousness. But here there is only the bridge. There is only the bridge and no one to cross over. I love that. That means this has to stay over. This goes away. And the bridge might be, if you were going to have a name for it, the bridge might be understanding.
Right. And a jump alone is possible to take you across in. And what came up, it just goes into that trust. Jump into what? Just going for it and applying these principles to life and seeing what happens. And of course, see the absolute, we're talking versus a relative level of interacting, of relating in a moment. The absolute ceases to be the absolute if it stoops to give directions in worldly matters. Well, but here worldly matter appears and directions are given, action is taken. But the disciple is corrected by his guru even in the relative sphere. And as you mentioned it, Bill, it's that not taking ownership, not a Jenny doership of action or directions taking. It's being conscious of that afterthought kind of activity that can seem to happen. Thus, you're led on to the absolute.
Yeah. The idea of the bridge isn't true. It's like the thing, the temporary thing that is useful, like a toothpick. You throw the toothpick away, and it's like that idea where it's a temporary idea that unlocks the mind that thinks it's what it's not, and then it relaxes the mind from that fixed position so that the mind is no longer the engaged, or the attention is not on the mind or through the mind.
Right. It's ultimately an analogy of,
right. Yeah.
But even in the jumping even happens within consciousness, and the idea that I think I can jump is what's kind of, laughable ultimately.
Right. Yeah. It says but the disciple is corrected by his guru, even in the relative sphere. Thus, you are led on to the absolute. And I would say by the open-minded awareness could be the Sat Guru, could be the inner, the higher reasoning guru. Doesn't have to be a physical guru. Let's move to this, to 116, deep sleep.
Deep sleep.
When I came across this one, Jenny, I thought about you as a doctor. Now, for those of you that don't know, Jenny was, or maybe still is, anesthesiologist, right, Jenny? And so you would know something pretty, I mean, you're trained in putting people to sleep. And so I'm interested in some of what we're going to talk about here, just based on your profession of understanding when I love surgery just for the reason when the anesthesiologist comes in, it's like I go to, it's like I count backwards, 5, 4, 3, and then all of a sudden I'm waking up again. Well, what happened?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, 30 years ago, my interest pulled towards anesthesia, which is the aspect of medicine most aligned with consciousness, at least really in research trying to understand it or to get to it. So, well, let's just first look at what Atmananda says.
Yeah.
There's proof, even in lower scriptures, that you are in your real nature in deep sleep. And the names given, Paramarthika, or Pranjana, meaning truth or consciousness. So this proves that there was no ego present and that you were there as consciousness and peace. And I think this was said last week or just before. The amazing thing is, if you share a roof with somebody, a very common question in the morning is, how'd you sleep last night? And we all can quickly and easily answer, it's, oh, it was great, or, oh, I didn't sleep very well. And that's a judgment made on whether you prefer to dream or prefer not to dream, whether that state was met there. But I just love that it's tethered to the deep longing of the peace, the deep peace of deep sleep. That is what something within this seemingly mind body wants to commune with. And Bill, just what you said, over and over and over and over again in the recovery room, people say, the best sleep I ever got. They're like, oh, what? First of all, they're shocked that they're done. And then secondly is, oh my gosh, it felt like 2 minutes. I can't believe it was 4 hours. And I say, oh, that was the best sleep, and with a smile on their face. And so, yeah, even not only under our roofs in the morning, but even something, it's actually even a business idea I have to give propofol naps, but I don't think I don't know if it would pass the board of medicine for ethics, but I think people would love it,
Wow. Yeah, I'd be afraid I would love it too much. Yeah.
Right. But there is something in the quieting of brain activity with anesthesia medications that different levels of body and mind power down, and a seemingly state that we call unconsciousness can arise, where there's no memory, there's no activity of the body or mind. But we give nothing to wake people up. Consciousness itself waking up, as the medications leave the physical body, they're metabolized by various mechanisms, and eventually enough leave the physical system that consciousness itself, as we started, the self-luminosity is what wakes a person up. There's no injection that we give. That's the magic whoopie-dee-doo, and then they open their eyes.
And yet you know by what you're offering, what you're administering, the amount and the formula, you know how long that is going to keep someone out.
Right. And it's super physiological, it's multivariable, and it is practice and experience and paying attention to small details to give, my intention is for a person to have the best anesthetic possible, the safest. And so yes, it's I'm describing it simply. It's pretty complex at all the levels, but just to say it again, it's consciousness itself wakes up, and there's no drug for that.
Right. Yeah. And Rick makes a point. The body wakes up, but the witnessing, remains throughout all states, to include deep, dreamless sleep.
Right.
And
that's the ability to report. How was it?
yeah, even if it's only, I mean, what in the reporting, there's not much to say. It's awesome, right? It can only, there's only one answer. How could it be otherwise?
Right, because it tends to be dreamless sleep of anesthesia, which is what sleep with dreams tends to be more fitful. The mind is still functioning, so there's not the rest of the deep peace of pure consciousness.
Yeah. Paul says, you report what you don't know because you are not there.
Right. There's no apparent I there.
Yeah.
Right. It's egoless.
No ego. Yeah. There's no personal I. Yeah.
Right. And then just to finish this deep sleep, there was no ego present, and you were there as consciousness and peace. When you turn to the next page, it's only when you consider things just as they appear that any problem arises. So just as I saw your hand do this, and so it was just the clinging, the imposition of doership or enjoyership upon an activity afterwards. That's what we are becoming aware of. That tendency of the mind to do that, or the words that just about to come up, the samskaras.
Right. Yeah. Before we go to 117, Amy said, in near-death experiences, the mind has been reported to leave the body, and it witnesses all kinds of things being done to it. It is also reported that thoughts are shared in this state as the dead person hears the thoughts of the doctors, nurses, and others waiting outside the room. In my mind, that's not. In my mind, that's still conscious. That's still local consciousness. It's still in the time and space continuum. So it's not really absolute.
Yes, and Amy, that's a great point, and of course a great fear during anesthesia is becoming awakened stuff. In my extensive practice, I have not yet heard a story that actually lined up. There's a misconception. People think that it's during the surgery, but it's either in the recovery room or maybe still in the operating room, but the procedure has ended. And yes, I don't know what near-death experiences are, but I definitely think that out-of-body experiences can happen, and that's nothing to do with the anesthesia itself. That's something that's happening outside of it.
It seems like, I mean, this is just a proposition, that it seems like in near-death experiences and in anesthesia and in ayahuasca, whatever, iboga, whatever the drug things are that shut off the ego, it seems like it's just installing a different filter interface to in the experience. It doesn't mean that you're moving into absolute reality. You're still using you're just using it. The finite experience is still part of the equation, and it's just using a different filter. That's just my theory on it. So let's just move on and go to 117, self-clarification.
Yeah, and to me, it sounded like you too. These last four kind of all self point to each other and deepen understanding just in referring to them back and forth. So I think you mentioned that too, Bill. You kind of noticed that.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
I was just going to read the number 117, self-clarification, and kind
Good.
of turned the English of it and clarification of the self.
And the question.
It makes it more, yeah. And the disciple asks, Guru Anathan, which is an affectionate name for Atmananda, someone taught us in here in the very first class we had together. You have told me that I am not the body, senses, or mind, that thought is pure consciousness alone, and I am the witness always. How to reconcile all these? And he answers it in the first paragraph and then goes on to expound upon it. The difficulty arises out of your reluctance to accept that thought is made of consciousness alone, but instead you take thought to refer directly to objects. So I think you mentioned, Bill, too, or it was mentioned in the chat, there's such a tendency for those of us who have overactive minds, and I'm not bad or good, or just, that to a jumping point off is just that thought itself even is an activity of consciousness in and of as consciousness. And if those of us who tend to live on that intellectual plane can deeply bring that in, like, how This is I'm not doing this. Consciousness is doing this itself.
Yes, yes.
That jump.
There's an idea that there's still a witness of the thought. There's still, even though its position is consciousness, there's a witness of thought.
And here we go. The next couple paragraphs almost elucidate a little bit of a practice that Atmananda would have us to consider. It's been proved to you that your pure consciousness, that just happened in number 114, the ultimate witness to all your activities. This thought you are not to take during any activity, but only after it. The thought after the incident relieves you of even the least taint of an attachment as a doer or an enjoyer that might have crept in during the incident. That's referring to that tendency to reach back and claim ownership of an activity as a doer or an enjoyer. But during the activity, if you take thought of being the witness, the mind engaged in activity gets diverted and the activity suffers to this extent. This isn't desired or devised. And this is the beauty of the everyday man's path, the direct path Atmananda shares with us, that chop wood, carry water, be working on a trail through the forest in your backyard, and it's just in the afterwards, they're taking no Jenny ownership of that activity. But not during the time. We don't have to be the witness or, be doing all these things. He's suggesting that it's afterwards to erase the least taint of an attachment as a doer or enjoyer.
Right. Yeah, I like in that during the activity, if you take the thought of the witness, the mind engaged in the activity gets diverted. So it's saying that the attention is moved instantaneously. I mean, I've seen Bill do that and then witness it and go, oh, and did you see that?
Yes, on the clarity of Jenny Beal, the witness is a concept to help remove identification with body or mind, but
Okay.
it's still a superimposition.
Yeah, thank you.
And a subjective, back to the fourth paragraph in here, a subjective transformation alone can realization be complete. And that means the I that I think I am, pure subject. You only have to make it natural. For that, you must outwardly allow the body, senses, and mind to continue their activities as before, but inwardly, after every activity, emphasize the consciousness or witness aspect, so as not to allow those activities to form new samskaras.
Right. So it's an inward-facing path, and the outward-facing path, but it's just to make the distinction. That's it. It's only to make the distinction, and then it says the emphasis or emphasize the consciousness or witness aspect, so as not to allow those activities. So it's that momentary sort of awareness that releases the tethering or the old residue. the imprint of samskaras.
Right. And it's in the third volume. There's a glossary in the back that samskaras is defined as conditionings of past experiences. So these conditionings, these limitations, apparent limitations on consciousness, on the self that I am, it's the undoing, the relaxing of these tendencies of the mind is where liberation is, freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. And he says you must understand that these statements were made from different levels. When I say that the I in you is the witness, their thoughts, feelings, perceptions, and doings are conceded. But when I say that thought is consciousness, I do not stand out as the witness of the thought, but I go into the make of thought. Then the thought as such vanishes. Body, senses, and mind also vanish likewise. So it's very subtle.
Right. And let's just continue a little bit further, Bill. When body, senses, and mind are conceded, I am the witness. But when they are severally examined and proven to be consciousness, I cease to be the witness also, which is what Jenny Beal pointed out. It's just a tool. And as Rick Westman's saying, there's no witness itself. We have to be careful of making that new ego identity, as the witness, that bring
It's
its
like the
own
observer. Yeah.
bag of tricks,
Yeah.
But it is he who has the ego present in him that does or does not do. He who has destroyed the ego in him knows neither doing nor non-doing. And again, that's just a realization of the pure outflowing expression of consciousness in these apparently separate human being experiences, infinite, unlimited.
Let's move to 118. The jiva, personal ego, comes into being as a result of the false identification of the Atma, self, with body, senses, and mind, or as a result of the superimpositions of doership or enjoyership upon the Atma. Who superimposes doership upon Atma is the question usually asked at this stage. This is the whole idea of
Well, he's taking us exactly where people get stuck. It's brilliant. And another way to phrase that question is it not he who superimposes himself a doer? And Atmananda says the question's absurd on the face of it. It rises upon a false presupposition, a false assumption that a doership exists even before doership comes into being. It's doing. It's pure doing that's happening.
Well, it's pure being, right?
Yes, but what Atmananda taught us, it could be sitting in a cave in the Himalaya mountains, but we're learning that it's rolling live action in the world, through the world.
So the doing is being done.
The doing is being done. And even number 119, he goes right back into that. Who? There's no doer prior to the doing.
Who is the law obtaining only in the realm of the jiva or mind?
And I just thought a different verb, prevailing, makes it flow a little bit better in English for me.
Say that.
Yeah, who is the law prevailing only in the realm of the jiva or mind, that personal ego.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we're talking about it, that's in the relativity, and applied in the realm of Atma, where there is no duality or relativity, the question becomes meaningless. So back to what he did in the last paragraph of paragraph 18, it's all reality. It's all consciousness.
Mm.
It's all God. It's all love. Whatever word you want to use, it's all the universe.
Yeah, doing and being are one and the same.
And perhaps the only aspect is it outflowing or is it inflowing? The direction the mind seems to be going in. Focusing outward object, focusing inward on subject. And not to get our knickers all in a twist when we wish it were going in some other direction, because it's Atma itself.
Hmm. And the second paragraph, in every activity, the I principle is the witness. The activity is in the mind's plane or lower still, but the witnessing, conceding that it is a function, is taking place in the plane of consciousness without an agent, instrument, or object.
Right.
I love this. This next two paragraphs, or this next paragraph, is what the Course says about bringing. You don't bring the truth to illusions. You bring illusions to truth. And that's because you are the truth. And you're that absolute presence. And somehow you mentally allow the illusion of thought to the feeling experience. You bring it in, welcome it, and you remain established as presence.
Beautiful. And he even finishes the last paragraph. It changes from third person to first person. Atmananda is speaking as consciousness. Though the I is always present in thought to help it function in my light or presence, higher up, I am witnessing it in my own plane, where I am all alone and unattached. So that points to what was, I saw some chatter about it in the chat, that we must be aware of claiming witnessship as a thing that I do.
Mm.
It's an aspect, a functioning aspect of consciousness, and it lights itself up. There's no I doing it at all.
Self-luminous.
Self-luminous.
There it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And even to the second paragraph, that last sentence, the witnessing, conceding that it's a function, is taking place without an agent, instrument, or object. So just as you were describing that pure being, at rest, there's no object, or it's just, it's working. You wake up from a nap, you wake up from anesthesia, and there it is. It's actually incredible.
It is.
I mean, this is from a physical perspective, but just I was watching Ricky Gervais in Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee with Jerry Seinfeld, and he said something like, and he's makes well known that he's an atheist, but clearly most comedians are quite the philosophers. He said that, did you know that just even from the sheer numbers of a sperm and an egg, it's the likelihood of you existing as the body mind you are is 400 trillion to 1. And I don't know how he got the math of that, and haven't spent any time on it, but just that sheer, then the chances of winning the lottery are looking pretty good if it's just 1 in 11 million,
Jenny Beal, is that a true number? Is that number even?
It has to do, yes, it has to do with the number of eggs and the number of sperm, and then the number of the DNA in each one, and the genes and chromosomes. So the number keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger the smaller and smaller we go. That in the unique DNA expression that the physical bodies, all of us are, the number he came up with 400 trillion, and then that just because trillion is 12 zeros. 12. And like $1,000 is a lot of money. Right?
Yes, that's funny. It's a big number, that's for sure. Thank you, Jenny. Jenny said, I don't think you can assign a probability to it because of the complex interactions.
Right. It's just out of the infinite potential.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
120. To know that you are the witness and to be a witness.
What a wonderful way to, this theme has been coming up as we've been holding our time together. These are entirely different things. The knowing that you are the witness versus the to be a witness. But you should not try to know that you are the knower. Both together are impossible. Your knowership is objectless and can never be objectified. You are always the witness, and you need not deliberately take that role, to play being a witness. Rather, Atmananda says, only take note of the fact that you are always the witness. Again, nothing experienced, perception, feeling, thought. The witnessing of it cannot be peeled away from its existence.
That was well said, Jenny. It's so tight, and it's absolute. And as soon as it has a word, it's been changed.
Like it was development of language, 75 to 50,000 years ago. What did that do? let's turn the page. But how are we to strengthen the conviction that you are the knower in order to counteract the old samskaras that you are the doer, enjoyer, etc.? Though the substance of doership and enjoyership is effaced, lessened, the samskaras might still remain as shadows. And this is what is, samskaras are these conditionings. Bernardo Kastrup mentions them too. There seems to be tendencies of energy that, in my little, they get stuck. There's some getting stuck, tension, and they're wanting to be released because the nature of consciousness is unlimited and infinite. And it wants it all. It is it all. So the last two paragraphs, with a little bit of a point of view of here, Atmananda's giving us some direction, perhaps a little bit of a practice to consider. It's that you are only to argue in your mind how you are always the real knower, and repeat the arguments over and over again. There are times when they'll become unnecessary, and a mere thought will take you to the conclusion. And gradually you'll find you don't even think about the truth. You will feel without feeling that you are always the witness, and that you are not affected by any activity or inactivity of the mind and senses in the relative sphere.
Yeah, this is just a temporary. This is offering a temporary means of, like a mantra, a temporary means of release of the residual, and it is that way. It's why these teachings, they come in to understand, and then we are able to use these tools to somehow let go or allow or welcome, or whatever the situation. It's a transformation that occurs as the residual shadows, as he calls it, they dissipate into the seeing of them without attachment or judgment.
That's beautiful, Bill. And to go back to the discourse referring to the bridge, these are these kinds of practices that we use as long as we seem to need a bridge. A practice or a mantra, as you mentioned, to use these things in the absolute level, nothing needs healing. But is that helpful to someone who has a sense of suffering? No,
Well, the last piece on that paragraph, witnessing is silent awareness. Huh. That's like music to the ears, right? Witnessing is silent awareness. Silent awareness has a beautiful sound to it.
Yeah.
He says, do not try to make it active in any way. Consciousness never takes any responsibility for proving the existence or the non-existence of an object.
Right. That would be activity of mind, or one might say, activity of the sense of separate self, the jiva, the personal ego. That just to recognize and know that there's a contemplation happening, and nothing wrong with that at all. But that's not silent witnessing. It's in the direction of objectivity, your thoughts and feelings and perception.
Yeah, silent awareness. Oh man, that's everything right there. Silent awareness says it all. Pure presence, presence. All of those they are speaking of the same thing.
Could they be t-shirts? Can we start a fad?
Yeah, Silent Awareness Club. Silent awareness. Oh, that's interesting. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
Well,
there
this has
anything
been
else in the
great.
chat that
Let's see. This was always a wonderful sharing. Thank you, Eve. Silent awareness, such peace. Thank you. Is this a private message? I don't know what that means, Paul. Blessings to everyone. Higher reasoning. Can we say that it's a form of reasoning that's specially applied toward the discovery of truth? Yeah.
right.
Yeah, this was great. This was an awesome conversation. Thank you for everyone's involvement, and thank you, Jenny, Sheehan, for your awesomeness. It was fun for all
Bill,
of us.
I'm reflecting yours. This is amazing group of people. Like, it's really cool we do this.
Yay!
Hey, Rosalind. Good to see you, hon. Love you too. Love you all. And next week, Jenny Beal is going to be our co-host. She's going to swap the schedule or she's going to take Jenny Sheehan's place, as I mentioned. And thank you all for being here today. This has been amazing and lovely, and I fully enjoyed it, as I know that you did too. And we'll see you next week. Thank you, Jenny Sheehan.
Oh, thank you.